The way that Bhante Sangharakshita has imagined the Eightfold Path, which I think is really wonderful, and which Artist City brought out a bit last week, starting with vision, is Sangharakshita points to the importance of that initial spark of inspiration. Really, that's what he wants us to be in contact with. And of course, when you're treading a path, it is good to at least know, if you don't really quite know your destination, you know some of the stops along the way. Maybe I don't really quite know how to get to the top of Mount Everest, but I can get to base camp, and that's a good start, isn't it? So we need a bit of a spark of imagination, a bit of a spark to get us going on this, to tread this path. And that vision has to come from us. We each have our own experience, our own question. Sometimes we have we have our question that's sort of taking us on the path. It might be that it's something about suffering. I think when I first came along to Buddhism, it was about suffering, not deep in the depth suffering, but the sort of the bumpy road of life, my own personal sort of sense of inadequacy or limitations, or the parts where I was self-critical, or not really knowing how to sort of go about in the world. Those parts of me were sort of driving me on, and I wanted to change the world as well. I wanted to, how can we make the world a better place? Those two things together. So it was a bit of suffering that was sort of bringing me on. And that's often, sometimes our vision is sort of sometimes connected with suffering. Maybe the death of someone, maybe a loss, maybe just some dissatisfaction somewhere. And that points to the sort of the prequel to the Eightfold Path, which is the Four Noble Truths. So the Eightfold Path is in fact the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. So, and you probably know these as well. The truth of that the Buddha said there are four truths. The first is that there is suffering in the world. And actually, I feel like it's a bit of a bold statement. It seems so true, but it's hard to say sometimes, isn't it? Because maybe we should all be better. Why don't I have the Guardian lifestyle in the glossy pages? Surely if I just try harder, my furniture can be arranged in the right way. My houseplants can be good. I can have the right sort of number of children and the sort of perfect career that's going in the right direction. But even with all of that, there's still sort of an element perhaps of dissatisfaction. So I think there's something, maybe especially these days, or from how I see it, about just sort of saying, actually, in our experience, there is suffering. It's not true to say that the Buddha said that life is suffering. He just sort of pointed it out. There is suffering in our experience. So there's a bit of suffering. It's a bumpy ride. That's the other way I translate the First Noble Truth. Life's a bit of a bumpy ride. And then the Buddha says, well, there are causes of suffering. And often that's to do with us trying to get what we want, a sort of sense of craving for the world to be on our terms, and also craving for a particular experience of ourselves that's sort of, we sort of have an idea of who we are. There's quite a lot of work we have to do to maintain that idea of who we are. So that sort of effort, that's the causes of some of the suffering. Third Noble Truth, there's the ceasing of suffering. Woo! So that's really good. We want to hear that. And then the Fourth Noble Truth is the path that leads to the end of suffering, and that's this path here, the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah. So we need a path and we need a vision to start. And I was thinking, when I was sort of writing this, I was thinking about when I became a vegetarian. A lot of my friends are vegetarians, and I wasn't a vegetarian. And then I got involved with Buddhism, and I became the vegetarian, probably the last vegetarian of my sort of my friends group. And they didn't keep it up, so they're not. Most of them are not vegetarian anymore. But you know, I'm still a vegetarian, however many decades later. And well, I think they didn't have quite a strong enough vision for why they wanted to be vegetarian. Some of it was to be healthier. Some of it was, you know, ecological. You know, some of it was just an idea of trying to be a good person, but it didn't sort of go deep enough. But because Buddhism has this clear connection to having an affinity with all life, with not causing harm. Becoming a vegetarian was something that then became a deeper and deeper practice, rather than just something I was doing. There was always different levels to it. So it was something I could easily continue and easily deepen as a practice. I remember when I, for the first years after I became a vegetarian, I would always, in my dreams, I was a vegetarian. I think I was working on it all the time, sort of continuing to deepen that sense of this practice of becoming a vegetarian, because I wasn't a natural vegetarian. You know, I didn't really, wasn't dying to be a vegetarian, but now I can't imagine not being it. Yeah, so I had a vision that sustained that that sort of ethical practice, and you know, didn't loosen. Yeah, so you do need a vision. And I think Sangharakshita talking about the first part of the Eightfold Path as perfect vision is really key. And he sort of says that, you know, feels that once we've got that glimpse of something, it sort of has this big effect on the rest of our lives, and we should really value it. So whatever is our spark of interest, whatever was it that sort of brought us along, or that was our perhaps a moment of awareness or empathy or suffering or joy, whatever it was, we should really value that and sort of bring it more into our lives, contemplate it, think about it, let it have its effect. Because it's from there that the rest of the path unfolds. And so then Sangharakshita sort of puts the rest of it, the rest of the other parts of the Eightfold Path, as the path of transformation. And the one that I'm going to talk about, perfect emotion, he says, actually, it's a bit of a mediator between the rest of the paths, but the rest of the aspects of the Eightfold Path. And I'll say a little bit more about that. Yeah. And I used to find the Eightfold Path as a teaching a bit dull. I used to think, oh, it doesn't look just like such a boring list. It didn't really have that much that really sort of drew me to it. But of course, I wasn't going very deep with it, I don't think. It's all really there. It's been great to do this preparation, actually, and think about it a lot more, and sort of have this sense of, oh yeah, the whole of the Buddhist path really is in here. I just haven't been looking very deep, and maybe I was put off by a list, but it's all in there. And I was thinking of a teaching that was given to a Queen Nanchung, not by the Buddha, but by a figure called Padmasambhava, who took Buddhism to Tibet. And Queen Nanchung said to the great master Padmasambhava, she said, give me a teaching, give me something that I can practice in my day-to-day life. She said, though I am not ready to renounce the world, I would like something that I could put into practice really steadily. And the great master, Padmasambhava, he says, pay urgent attention to impermanence, then practice meditation. And he goes on to give her more instructions. But I really like her question, or her question to him. She says, I'm not ready to renounce the world yet, to become a monk or to a nun, to let it all go. I'm not ready yet, but I want to practice. And I can feel a bit like Queen Nanchong. How far am I ready to go with practice? Oh, well, and slowly, my I open my hand a bit more, or loosen my hand to sort of ordinary ways of living, or sort of conventional ways of living, and I can practice the Dharma a bit more fully. So I feel like it's sort of suitable to us here. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to practice. And, I guess a lot of us here really want to sort of put Buddhism into practice and see what happens from it. And I'm not ready to renounce the world yet, but give me a teaching and let me put it into practice and see where it leads me. And of course, Queen Nanchong gains enlightenment. These stories often have a happy ending. but she does. She practices. She takes his teaching to heart. And I think that's what we're trying to do here, isn't it? We hear a bit of the Dharma, and we try and put it into practice. It's like, and what effect does it have? Yeah. And I guess that's this is a bit of the heart of the matter with this particular aspect of the Eightfold Path that I'm going to be looking at, which is perfect emotion. Because it could also be, the title of this talk could also be, why is it so hard to do the things that I know would be really helpful to do? And so this was a talk that I'm writing for you, but I'm also writing it for me, because why is it so hard to do the things that I know would be good to do? Yeah. So let's, I think I can turn my page. I've done messy notes. I sometimes type them out but I'm trying to sort of be a bit less perfect. Yeah. So this perfect emotion, as we're calling it, is samyak sankalpa. So some of you might know the word sankalpa, but it's so it's whole or thorough or integral samyak, and other ways to translate sankalpa are resolve, resolution, a vow or a promise, something like that, an intention. So, intention and will, your own will, your will to do something. That's another translation. So it's sort of in the area of our whole kind of our whole lives, actually, who we really are, our intentions, our will, how we engage with ourselves in the world, to let something unfold, to sort of put ourselves behind what we want to do. Yeah, how do we bring the whole of ourselves, or more of ourselves, behind our resolves and our intentions, and this sort of sense of our will and what we want to do? Well, often or sometimes these things are formulated a bit from our conceptual understanding, aren't they? It's like, it would be a good idea if I did X. You know, if I started jogging, it would be a really good idea. I would be really fit and well and healthy if I did more exercise. That would be good. Day one, okay, I'll get up. Day two, oh, I'll get up a bit later. Day three, oh, it's a bit cold. Day four, it's fallen by the wayside. So why haven't I taken up jogging? I have no interest actually to take up jogging, but why didn't I manage to carry out this resolve? And well, I don't know, could slow down a bit, couldn't I? Well, it's often because it just comes from what we think is a good thing to do, or the right thing to do. And it could well be the good or the right thing to do, but we haven't got enough of ourselves engaged and involved in this decision. So we haven't spoken to our sort of our depths a bit more, to our psyche, to our emotional lives. We haven't really included them in that part of me in the conversation. And I think that my intellect alone will be able to not just make the decision, but carry it out. So with anything that we do, we need to be behind it with more of ourselves than just a good idea. If we've got a good idea, it may not carry us all the way through. And I mean, I guess everyone's had that experience of being let down by, you know, having a great idea, but not really making it all the way through. Yeah. So, yeah, we need to bring the whole of ourselves to the Dharma life, really. So if we want to tread the Eightfold Path, we want to practice the Buddha's Dharma and see what happens with it, see how that really unfolds. Well, we have to bring our whole selves, our whole selves to it. And in a way, my engagement with Buddhism isn't just a sort of an add-on to my life. It's now the whole of my life. So actually, I need to be emotionally intelligent with the whole of my life, because otherwise I'm sort of pulling and pushing and engaged and not engaged, and able to get up for meditation sometimes and not able to get up for meditation and other times, and having good ideas about what it might be to practice Buddhism, but not necessarily being able to sort of fully engage myself in this. Yeah. Yeah, I've written down here stubbornness, fear, what's sort of semi-conscious, all these things that sort of are blocks to sort of getting involved a bit more with deepening practice, or with deepening my engagement with myself. Yeah. So Sangharakshita, the way he's talking about this is that we need more than the rational mind to be engaged. We need to be bringing the whole of ourselves in. Yeah. Let's just see. No, I'll keep going and then bring in sort of questions later. So I remember a while back, quite a while back, well, I used to have what I would think of as quite harsh speech. I used to be, was particularly sort of impatient. When I would get impatient or stressed, that would come out in how I would speak to people. And I would really try and change it, but I wasn't really hearing how harsh my speech was, really, and not really taking on how hurt people would be to be on the end of it. It can be really, you can feel really like you've been dismissed if someone's speech is sort of harsh, or not listened to, or just disregarded as a human being when you're on the end of sort of really negative, angry speech. And I sort of knew about it, but I didn't really take it in fully. And I was, you know, trying to change, trying to be more aware of it, trying to change. And then one day at work, I can't remember what I did, but I remember feeling, going off to lunch and feeling that it's like, oh God, that was such a unfortunate interaction, but I won't worry about it. I'm sure it'll be fine. Sort of just thinking, oh, well, I'll just go back and get back on talking to my colleague. And when I came back, she said, oh, you know, can I have a chat? And she took me aside and she just said, actually, it's really upsetting to me to be on the end of that really negative speech. So she didn't sort of say, you know, what a difficult person I was, or, you know, sort of tell me how terrible I was. She just told me about the effects of my speech on her. And it really went in. It was such a gift, actually. It really went in because I heard what it was like to be on the end of that. I mean, I know what it's like to be on the end of that kind of speech. It feels awful. But she was really giving me a gift by sort of, letting me know the effect of how I'd spoken to her. And it was that made the shift, actually, helping me really start to work on this tendency, this habit of a harsh speech. And I couldn't do it until I really heard how it hurt her, what it was like to be on the end of that. And of course, that had caused a distance and a lack of trust between us, because she wasn't going to be looking to engage with me on different things, because you don't know what, if you're on the end of someone's impatient speech, you don't want to be sort of doing projects with them and things like that, do you? Sort of hoping someone else will do the project with them. I mean, it wasn't really terrible, but it was definitely a habit, and a habit sort of, I can hear it in my family. I can hear this sort of speech. So it was only through really dropping down into the experience of what it was to be on the end of that helped me to really think, okay, I really, really, really want to change this. I wanted to change this. It's not just a good idea anymore. It feels like I must do it. I must take on that I'm hurting people and I'm damaging my relationships through this negative speech. Yeah, and I think there have been different times in my life where, well, and I'm sure in your life as well, where it's that shift for engaging the emotions that allows that something different, a habit that's been really hard to break, to start to shift. So again, with sort of vegetarianism, I was really trying to be better about the quality of the eggs that I would eat, and I would really try and imagine the chickens in their coops of the not free range, not good free range eggs. And now if I see those eggs, I couldn't possibly eat them. I really sort of had to imaginatively take on the suffering that was part of that production of eggs, to sort of make that change. I had to engage my emotions with it. I had to sort of become a bit bigger. Yeah, so I think sometimes, we want to change, we want to transform, we want to shift some habits, but we sort of get a bit blocked. And maybe it's sort of taking the time to stop and engage with ourselves and sort of think, oh, what needs to change here? Sometimes it comes from the world, doesn't it? Like my friend giving me that feedback. But I had to stop and listen to that and not brush it aside. Maybe I'd had that feedback before and I'd not really heard it. It's that it's really wanting to make that change, really feeling the effects. Yeah. So why is it hard to make the changes? Because we're not all on board. All of us are not all on board with the decisions that we're making. We need to become a bit bigger, become a bit deeper in our connections with ourselves, not just try and make our decisions based on intellect and good ideas alone. Now, sometimes that does work, of course. Sometimes you've got the resolve and you can make the decision. It's not that never happens. And sometimes things happen a bit less consciously. There's something going on and I'm not fully conscious of why I'm engaged with a new practice, but underneath I can sort of see that something's changing. So it's not always about being fully conscious, but it's just having a sense of us, I guess, as slightly bigger beings than just our sort of our will and our resolve to make changes. Because I suppose, especially if we're trying to transform quite sort of deep habits or do something new, you do need to sort of have a bit more of you on board than just a sort of just will alone. Yeah. 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 So the phrase that that gets used a lot here is that we need to, by Sangharakshita, his phrase, it's quite a mouthful. We need to find emotional equivalents to our intellectual understanding. So we need to find what's sort of a bit gutsy within us, or a bit that has a bit of spark of life, of interest, of curiosity, perhaps, something there that will meet our intellectual curiosity, that will meet our sort of our intellectual understanding. So there's a story from, I think it's from the Chinese tradition. Chinese emperor is greeting a monk who's been on a long pilgrimage to India. He's collected all these texts and he's brought them back to China, and the Chinese emperor really is excited to meet him, and he sits him down, gives him all the sort of pleasantries, and then he says, "Give me a teaching." And the monk says to the emperor, he says, well, okay, the central teaching of Buddhism, cease to do what is evil, or cease to do what is unhelpful. Cultivate the good, so cultivate what is helpful, and purify the heart. So, yeah, open yourself up in a way. And the emperor says, well, that's ridiculous. That's so simple that a child of 3 can understand that. Cease to do what is not good, cultivate what is useful and helpful, purify the heart. And the monk says, yes, a child of 3 can understand, but a man or a woman of 80 cannot do this. I think that's probably all of us. It's easy to understand something, and it's so much harder to put it into practice. Yeah. I mean, and there's lots of examples, aren't there? I want to be generous. And then I think, you know, after meditation, or, you know, I'm feeling good and I feel like, oh yes, I'll be really generous. And I'll give these things, you know, I want to get rid, I'll give these things. I really want someone to have them. And then a bit later, it's like, well, not the cup. And oh, this is my favorite pen. I mean, you can get them anywhere, but this, it's mine now, and I really like it. And well, I did pay quite a lot of money for that book. Oh, actually, this is someone else's anyway. You know, what am I really, really willing to give away in an open-hearted moment? Maybe, you know, I can sort of feel like I'd love to give everything, but then I get restrained, or a bit, you know, sort of worried about what I'll have if I give more than I give more. So how can I feel more generous? How can I really truly feel more generous and not worry about the cheap favorite pen, or the thing that sort of yeah, not worry about what I'll lose from being generous. You can't just be generous. So I've got to cultivate a bit of something else within me, something else that might want to give to the homeless person who has a lot less than I do. How can I choose to give? I walked past a guy the other day, and you know, I don't have any change. Sorry, I don't have any change. And then I thought, right, go to that point in the Grafton Centre and just give some money to Cambridge Street Aid, because it's so easy to, oh, sorry, I don't have any change. Just go and give something, you know, just go and give something. Try and practice some sort of generosity. Yeah, so this is the kind of central problem sometimes of our lives. How do we sort of mediate between what we think we can do and what we'd like to do, and then, you know, what really happens. So maybe we'll just get into groups, maybe say of 4, and maybe there's some, not exactly strategies, but what do you think makes the difference with bridging this gap between what we, what our intellectual understanding is? Buddhism is practicing generosity, or something that we'd like to do. I'd like to eat less sugar, whatever it is, our sort of understanding of something, and then that sort of gap between actually how difficult it is to do. What do you think makes the difference with you engaging with that? You know, what's your experience when you've had a conundrum like that? You want to put something into practice, jog, or do exercise, go to bed earlier, and you've either been able to do it and it's been really successful and you think, oh yeah, I know what that was, or it's like, God, that was really hard and I don't know what it was, what was that sort of gap that I had. So I've given you 2 options there, which is not very helpful. The positive one, what happened when it went well? What makes the difference? What do you think? Yeah. So let's do that for about 15 minutes. It made the difference. If you had a resolve to do something and you managed to do it, what were the factors in that? Getting hot. It's warm in here, isn't it? Great. I'd be really curious to know what was coming up in people's discussion groups. Would anyone care to share what was making the difference for you with these kinds of changes? Rewards. What sort of rewards are you after?
Well, we were all agreeing, weren't we? We were all in different ways saying that we like lots of positive people.
Yeah, we went from stick motivation to a bit of carrot motivation.
Carrot is so good, isn't it?
Yeah, we also talked about intrinsic motivation and the ability to have this great vision and how you can manifest that in your mind, and how that can actually lead to fruition through you engaging with your emotions.
Yeah. So yeah, stick works for a while, doesn't it? Stick can start, like that sort of bit of rub or whatever, that extra sort of tire around here, that can be a motivation. But ultimately you need something to come back, don't you? Something to give you some sort of positivity or reward, or did you have any things in particular you were thinking of when you were in your discussion?
Yes, we talked about external motivation to get that activation energy. We talked about, an example was a commitment to do like some daily practice meditation. So just before like 5 to 7 was the agreed time, you would ring each other up and say, right, we're going to meditate, and
yes,
and that just set you in perpetual motion to have that practice without having to call.
Did you really do have that?
That was me. I'm paraphrasing. That was, yeah.
Oh, so would you like all of our numbers?
You can imagine it.
You can, yeah.
And it's that, that slick on the wheel that's going to.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Maria, you were keeping a meditation diary for a while, weren't you? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good way to, if you don't have a friend, you sort of keep your own account. Yeah. Yeah, poor Maria. Great. That sounds like a very good discussion going on over there. Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, giving up sugary foods.
Yeah,
So,
you do. And how did you guys, how did that happen then?
well, we came to the conclusion that failure was useful.
Yeah, yeah. And then, sorry, I'm just going to asking questions. How do you then, what was the process of learning from that then?
Well, we don't often know how much of us is behind it until we have a go.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And then
true.
we find out.
Yeah, and then you find out if it's something you really want to do or not.
That's
Yeah,
a bit like me with vegans. It's failed. But vegetarianism's pretty easy.
I think there's something sometimes about really being in your experience. So, sometimes if you're trying to give something up, feeling the effects of it. So really sort of something about slowing down and really allowing yourself to feel the effects of what it is that you're doing. Gives you the information that you need that helps to sort of broaden out your experience, so that you can bring a bit more resolve to it. Feeling a bit sick from sugar perhaps, or and you can sort of really just feel that it's like, right, I'm going to so sometimes I've used this, I'm really going to feel the effects of this. Can also work positively, can't it? I'm really going to take in the effects of this meditation. I'm going to leave like 15 minutes at the end of meditation where I'm not going to rush to get changed for work and get out the door. I'm just going to have a 15-minute period and see if that makes a difference to how I can appreciate the meditation practice. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What else are people talking about?
We talked about, we kind of did the classics as well. We did sugar, alcohol, smoking, and death.
And, and so how are you giving up death? I'm really interested.
I think we talked about the word perfect in front of them, and I think something that everyone in our group was pointing to was a Buddhist wholeheartedness.
Oh, that's nice.
We're not sure what this thing quite is, but when people gave descriptions of becoming vegan or whatever it was they wanted to do, the thing that kind of got them there was like something that was wrapped around it, which was, it wasn't perfectly, it wasn't there yet. But
that's right.
That those kind of words come up, but we couldn't really put our finger on it. But when people talked about successes, it was like it wrapped around and sunk in, and then it was just there. It was really hard to get there.
Yeah. I think that's how you know it's practice, isn't it? That's how you know you sort of got a bit of because it's not easy. So then the change is happening, or the sort of the transformation, the shift is happening because actually there's a bit of rub there. Yeah, but that's I really like that image, because I was thinking as well, sometimes sometimes I've definitely embarked on something and there is a fire underneath, something's driving it, but I'm not really conscious of the whole thing. The more I'm conscious of it, the more of me can be engaged. But sometimes there's a will to do it, and it can be, I like your image of the wrapping round. Somehow that you don't have to meet all the way, do you? But it's a good enough start to and then it has its own momentum somehow. Great. Please.
I'm not sure I really expressed this in the group. I'm going to say something different from what we're trying to.
Excellent.
It just occurred to me that for me, perfectionism gets in the way of approaching major change like that. So I think coming back to the noble truths really, and expecting the suffering along the way, so it's not such a shock when it does happen, that it is going to be hard to make this change. And I think that helps, acceptance of that really helps to sort of build resilience where perhaps you're not getting the results that you want, and you know, and sort of helps with patience and kind of trust in the path of community.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of we have expectations, don't we? Expectations of how things are going to be, and actually just letting them unfold. Maybe noticing that it is hard to get out of bed, or yeah, whatever it is that we're sort of you know, my mother does wind me up sometimes, or my sister, or my partner, or you know, I'm not going to grumble about the fact that the washing up isn't done in the right way, or that cup, why does that cup never get washed, you know, left there? I don't leave it there, you know. I'm not going to grumble about these things. Maybe that's my practice, and then it comes out. So you know, just letting that just be how it is. Yeah does that meet what you were saying in a way? Not quite, perhaps.
No, I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah, just not be discouraged when challenges happen.
Yeah.
And just that kind of equanimity with it. Might not be perfect.
Yeah.
It might not be quite the results that I was hoping for.
That's it.
But it's continuing in the right direction.
Exactly.
That sort of idea of sort of incremental changes.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. The
And
imperfect path.
Yeah.
And perhaps trusting yourself a bit as well.
Yeah, that's
Self-trust
right.
as well.
That's right. Yeah, having sort of metta and trust in there. It's like making the start
Yes.
is something in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, you had little jazz hands going on there.
No, I was just thinking about one thing that someone said over there. I think it was about subjugation ringing round,
Oh yeah.
which touches on something we were talking about right at the end of ours, which is about community. I guess if we think about the tire that someone's trying to get rid of, then you know, think something like Weight Watchers, for example.
Yes.
About
That's right.
That's really what drives us there. And in a way, the community here is what helps us try to, you know, be successful.
Yeah.
And in a way, we can lean into that community more, and that could provide that motivation.
Yeah, it's definitely easier, isn't it, to do it with a gang, with friends. Yeah, it's really good. I heard you guys also talk about enjoyment. You know, it was good actually. It made me sort of broaden out my sort of definition of sort of your emotion. Sort of you get a bit fixed on a term, don't you? Actually, enjoyment, looking for enjoyment in what we do. And I had sort of thought about, sorry, we've just gone over time. These indirect ways, you know, meditation. I was going to sort of say friendship as well. Slowing down. These sorts of ways that aren't necessarily connected directly with what I think, where I think I'd like to make the change, but actually they have a positive effect. Because if I'm practicing the metta bhavana, actually I've got a bit more positive emotion. I'm not particularly thinking about what I want to change, but the change kind of happens, or, you know, giving myself a bit more sort of mental space or sort of time. Actually, I mightn't be thinking about particularly what I'm, you know, wanting to do, but I'm sort of opening myself up to something different, sort of changing my sort of internal landscape a bit. So yeah, these are also ways that can sort of relate to building a practice that sort of gives space for change and gives you know, helps with sort of that sort of transformation. Yeah.